The Krezak battlecruiser emerged from hyperspace with practiced precision, its crystalline hull refracting the dim light of a distant sun. Inside the command center, Captain Zexkor studied the holographic display of their target. Asteroid Mining Station LV-2247, a lonely human outpost clinging to a mineral-rich rock in the outer reaches of their territory. Scanners confirm minimal defensive capabilities, Captain. Second-in-command Verlac reported, his mandibles clicking with anticipation. 3 gun emplacements, all powered down. Their shield generator appears to be operating at 20% capacity, barely enough to maintain atmosphere. Zexkor's compound eyes reflected the rotating image of the station. 3 successful raids this solar cycle had earned their crew a fearsome reputation, but something about this target felt almost too perfect. The Krezak were known throughout 3 galaxies for their precision strikes, yet they'd never encountered a human facility this poorly defended. Life sign readings. He chittered, extending a crystalline armored limb to manipulate the hologram. Detecting only 4 humans aboard, Captain. Minimal movement. They appear to be in the central control room. Verlac's antennae twitched with excitement. The mineral readings are extraordinary. Enough rare earth elements to fund our operations for the next 3 cycles. The bridge crew's excitement was palpable. Their last raid had netted them advanced Centaurian shield technology. But this could set them up for early retirement. Humans were known for their stubbornness, not their intelligence. Leaving such valuable resources so poorly defended seemed perfectly in character for such a primitive species. "Prepare the boarding party," Zexkor ordered, rising from his command pod. "I'll lead this one personally. Something this valuable deserves my attention." He paused, mandibles working thoughtfully. "And Verlac, full stealth protocols. Just because they're primitive doesn't mean we need to be sloppy." The boarding party assembled in the launch bay. 12 of the finest raiders in the Outer Rim, each encased in crystalline armor that could deflect most energy weapons. Their own weapons were powered down to avoid detection, though Zexkor doubted the human sensors could detect them anyway. The boarding shuttle detached silently from the cruiser, maneuvering through the asteroid field with elegant precision. As they approached the station's main airlock, Zexkor noticed something odd about the construction. The outer hull looked primitive, all rough welds and basic alloys, but something about the seams wasn't quite right. He dismissed the thought. Humans were known for their haphazard engineering. "Cutting through the outer doors now, Captain," the tech specialist reported, deploying a molecular disassembler. The device hummed softly, creating a perfect circle in the airlock's outer door. Too perfect, Zexkor thought. The metal gave way too easily. They cycled through the airlock in groups of 4, weapons ready but unnecessary, in the face of zero resistance. Emergency lights cast everything in a dull red glow, creating shadows that seemed to move just at the edge of vision. Their boots clicked against metal flooring, the sound echoing just a fraction longer than it should have. "Control room is 3 levels up," Verlac reported, consulting his scanner. "Minimal power signatures except for life support and something else. Getting some unusual readings from deeper in the station." Zexkor's antennae twitched. The unusual readings were probably the mineral deposits they'd detected, but something felt off. His instincts, honed by decades of raiding, were screaming at him to turn back, but the potential prize was too great to ignore. "Forward," he ordered, leading his team deeper into the station. "Maintain calm silence unless necessary. Let's make this quick and clean." None of them noticed the subtle clicks in the walls as they passed, or the way certain panels shifted microscopically in their wake. None of them realized that every step they took was being measured, analyzed, and recorded. None of them understood that they weren't the hunters here. They were the experiment. Sarah Chen sat perfectly still in the dimly lit control center, her eyes reflecting the glow of a dozen holographic displays. Each screen showed a different angle of the Krezak raiders as they moved through the station's corridors. 3 months of preparation, countless simulations, and now the moment of truth had arrived. They took the bait beautifully. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez whispered from his station, monitoring power fluctuations across the facility. His fingers danced across haptic controls, making microscopic adjustments to the station's systems. Didn't even hesitate at the airlock. Sarah allowed herself a small nod, but kept her focus on the main display. The Raiders' crystalline armor sparkled under the emergency lighting, exactly as their intelligence reports had described. The Kreezak had hit 3 research stations in the past month, but this time they'd chosen the wrong target. Dr. Wei, begin Protocol Labyrinth, she ordered, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Start with Section A7. Let's see how they handle a subtle introduction. Dr. Wei, their systems specialist, initiated the sequence. Deep within the station's walls, thousands of microscopic machines whirred to life. The change was almost imperceptible at first. A slight shift in wall panels, a subtle realignment of corridor angles. The station wasn't just moving, it was awakening. Contact in 3, 2, 1. Rodriguez counted down. On screen 6, a Kreezak warrior strode confidently past a junction. The moment he cleared the intersection, nanomaterials in the walls restructured themselves, changing the corridor's configuration by mere millimeters. To the naked eye, nothing had changed. But Sarah knew that first subtle shift had just turned the entire section into a gradually tightening spiral. They're approaching the first decision point, Dr. Wei reported, her hands hovering over the emergency shutdown controls. A precaution they'd probably never need. Want to place bets on which way they'll go? Sarah shook her head, though a slight smile played at the corners of her mouth. They'll go left. Their tactical databases always favor left turns during infiltration. And when they do, right on cue, the raiding party turned left at the junction. Sarah tapped a command into her console, and the station responded. Gravity plating adjusted by 0.3%, creating an almost imperceptible tilt. The Raiders' next 3 turns would be left as well, though they'd swear they were moving in a straight line toward the central vault. Life support analysis confirms 12 Kreezak biosignatures, Rodriguez reported. Their armor's more advanced than our last scan showed. New crystal matrix structure, probably adapted after their raid on the Centaurian outpost. Good, Sarah murmured. That's exactly the kind of data we need. Dr. Wei, activate the atmospheric sampling protocols. Let's see what that armor's really made of. The station's environmental systems began their subtle work, introducing trace elements that would interact with the crystalline armor. Nothing harmful. They weren't here to kill the Raiders. They were here to learn. Captain, Wei's voice carried a note of concern. They're approaching the Theta Junction ahead of schedule. Should we delay the next phase? Sarah studied the tactical display, watching the Raiders' formation. Their leader, marked by slightly more ornate armor, was exhibiting signs of unease. His antennae were twitching more frequently, head turning to scan their back trail. No, she decided. They're getting suspicious. Time to give them something to think about. Initiate second stage modifications in sections C4 through C7. Let's see how they handle a more direct approach. As if responding to her words, the station's deeper mechanisms engage. The subtle shifts became more pronounced. Corridors began to alter their dimensions, not enough to be obvious, but enough to disorient. The trap wasn't just closing. It was beginning to flex its muscles. They're about to realize they can't backtrack, Rodriguez noted, his voice carrying a hint of professional admiration. These Kreezak raiders have hit 3 stations without losing a single warrior. Want to bet how long before they start shooting? Sarah's eyes never left the main display. They won't, she said with quiet confidence. They're professionals. When they realize something's wrong, they'll try to analyze it first. And by then, she gestured at the holographic model of the station's full configuration. By then, we'll have them exactly where we want them. The next phase was about to begin, and Sarah Chen was ready to show these raiders why humanity's greatest weapon had always been its mind. Something's wrong, Verlac announced, mandibles clicking with agitation. The Krezak second-in-command studied his scanner display, which flickered erratically. "Captain, the corridor we used to enter. It should be right here." Zexkor turned, compound eyes focusing on the solid metal wall blocking their path. His crystalline armor reflected the emergency lighting, casting fractured patterns across the bulkhead. He'd been raiding ships and stations for 20 cycles, but he'd never encountered anything like this. "Check the structural integrity," he ordered, running an armored appendage along the wall surface. The metal felt wrong somehow. Too smooth, too perfect. Could they have deployed emergency bulkheads? The tech specialist, Kirvan, pressed a sensor array against the wall. "Negative, Captain. This isn't a bulkhead. According to these readings, this section of corridor has always been here, but that's impossible. We just came through here 6 minutes ago." A low vibration hummed through the deck plates beneath their feet. Several raiders shifted uncomfortably, their natural crystalline armor resonating with the subtle frequency. Their helmet communications crackled with increasing interference. "Forward scans degrading," reported Maslik, their point man, getting bizarre energy readings from all directions. "They're either using some kind of advanced jamming technology, or—" His voice cut off as his scanner emitted a high-pitched whine before dying completely. Zexkor felt his antennae twitch involuntarily. The humans they'd observed in the control room hadn't moved, hadn't even appeared to notice their presence. Yet something was happening to his perfectly planned raid, something that defied explanation. "New plan," he announced, his voice steady despite his growing unease. "We proceed to the central vault. Maintain visual contact. Mark our path with tracker beacons." He turned to his demo expert. "Ravkor, place a molecular beacon here, something we can track even through interference." Ravkor stepped forward, reaching for his equipment belt. The beacon activated with a soft pulse, its quantum signature designed to penetrate any known shielding technology. The raider placed it carefully on the mysterious wall. They moved forward, deeper into the station's maze-like corridors. The emergency lighting continued to cast everything in a blood-red glow, but now shadows seemed to move just at the edge of their vision. The air felt thicker somehow, as if the very atmosphere was watching them. "Captain," Verlak's voice carried an unfamiliar note of fear. "The beacon. It's moving." The entire team turned. The quantum beacon, designed to remain fixed in space regardless of gravitational forces, was sliding slowly across the wall's surface. Not falling, moving horizontally, as if pulled by an invisible force. "Impossible," Ravkor breathed. "Those beacons are anchored to quantum spacetime. They can't move unless—" He stopped, his crystalline armor vibrating with tension. "Unless what?" Zexkor demanded. "Unless spacetime itself is being manipulated." A low groan echoed through the corridor, metal shifting like a living thing. The raiders watched in stunned silence as the walls around them seemed to ripple, the motion almost imperceptible, but undeniably real. Their escort formation tightened instinctively. "The humans," Verlak said quietly. "Could they have we underestimated them?" Zexkor's response was cut short by a sudden shift in perspective. The corridor ahead seemed to stretch, distances becoming uncertain. Two raiders stumbled, their sense of balance disrupted by the subtle spatial distortion. "We don't have enough information," Zexkor decided, fighting down his own growing disorientation. "The vault is our priority. Whatever's happening here, the answers must be in the central core. Move out, but stay alert. This isn't a normal station." As they moved forward, none of them noticed how each intersection they passed sealed itself seamlessly after they left, the metal flowing like liquid before solidifying again. None of them realized that their every reaction, every decision, was being meticulously recorded and analyzed. In the control room, Sarah Chen watched the raiders' growing confusion with professional interest. "Begin Phase 3, she ordered softly. "Let's show them what this station can really do." The trap wasn't just closing. It was about to bare its teeth. "Split up," Zexkor commanded, his voice carrying an edge that his team had never heard before. 3 groups, 4 warriors each. We'll cover more ground. The words had barely left his mandibles when he felt it. A subtle shift in the artificial gravity, so slight that he almost convinced himself he'd imagined it. Verlac's antennae twitched violently. Captain, with all due respect, dividing our forces in this maze might not be. We're being herded. Zexcor cut him off. Every time we move as a group, the station corrals us like prey. Split up. It's our only chance to understand what we're dealing with. The raiders divided into their assigned teams, each taking a different corridor from the junction. Team 1, led by Verlac, headed towards what their malfunctioning scanners indicated was the power core. Team 2, under Kirvan, moved towards the supposed mineral storage. Zexcor led Team 3 straight for the central control room. They made it exactly 30 meters before the station's true capabilities revealed themselves. Verlac's team encountered it first. The deck beneath their feet tilted almost imperceptibly, a degree so slight that their inner ears barely registered it. But like water flowing downhill, they found themselves drifting towards a circular chamber. The moment the last raider crossed the threshold, the entrance sealed, not with a dramatic crash, but with the silent flow of liquid metal reforming into seamless wall. Status report, Zexcor demanded over the comm. Static answered him. Verlac. Team 1, respond. In another section, Kirvan's team faced their own nightmare. The corridor they traversed began to rotate, slowly at first, then with increasing speed. Their magnetic boots, designed for zero-gravity operations, suddenly activated and deactivated in random patterns. The raiders found themselves walking on walls, then ceilings, their sense of up and down completely disrupted. Something's affecting our suit systems, Kirvan reported, his message barely cutting through the interference. The metal in the walls, it's not just moving, it's adaptive. It's learning from our equipment, finding weaknesses in the transmission cut off in a burst of static. Zexcor's own team faced perhaps the most insidious trap. The corridor they traversed remained perfectly normal, almost mockingly so. But with each step, subtle magnetic fields interfered with their crystalline armor's neural interfaces. Thoughts became sluggish, reactions delayed. The emergency lighting pulsed in patterns that seemed random but carried subliminal messages their brains struggled to process. Our armor, one of his warriors observed, voice slurring slightly. The crystals, they're resonating with something in the walls, like they're being studied. In the control room, Sarah Chen watched the chaos unfold across multiple displays. Each team had been isolated in specially designed containment zones, each one calibrated to analyze different aspects of Kreezak technology and tactics. Chamber 1 is collecting data on their armor's crystalline structure, Dr. Rodriguez reported. The magnetic variance is mapping every frequency their systems operate on. Chamber 2 is stress testing their environmental adaptations. Chamber 3. He smiled slightly. Chamber 3 is doing what you do best, Captain. It's getting inside their heads. Sarah nodded, her fingers dancing across control surfaces. Increased the resonance frequency in Chamber 1 by 0.3%. Let's see how their armor handles harmonic stress. Dr. Wei, begin atmospheric sampling in Chamber 2. I want to know exactly what their life support systems are filtering out. The station continued its complex dance, each movement precisely calculated. Walls flowed like mercury, corridors twisted in geometric patterns that shouldn't have been possible, and the most sophisticated trap humanity had ever devised performed its analysis with cold efficiency. In their separate prisons, the Kreezak raiders were learning a harsh truth. They hadn't stumbled into a primitive mining outpost. They'd walked straight into a laboratory. And they were no longer the hunters. They were the specimens under the microscope. Zexcor, his mind fighting through the growing fog, realized their fatal mistake. The humans hadn't left this station defenseless out of ignorance. They'd left it defenseless because it wasn't a station at all. It was a predator. Ravkor, the Kreezak demolitions expert, pressed his most advanced cutting tool against the chamber wall. The quantum edge blade, capable of slicing through battleship armor, barely left a scratch on the seamless surface. He activated the tool's highest setting, pushing it beyond safe limits. The blade shattered, its crystalline fragments scattering across the floor. Impossible. He chittered, mandibles clicking rapidly in distress. The molecular structure, it's like nothing I've ever seen. The metal, it's not just adaptive, it's evolving. Behind him, the other two members of his separated group watched as the scattered blade fragments slowly dissolved into the floor, absorbed by the strange metal. Their containment chamber, a perfect sphere 20 meters in diameter, hummed with barely perceptible energy. Look, his companion Tesri pointed with an armored limb. Where the fragments had been absorbed, the floor's surface now showed a crystalline pattern, remarkably similar to their own armor. It's not just containing us. It's learning. Above them, previously invisible sensor arrays emerged from the walls like blooming flowers. Each device was different, some familiar, others completely alien in design. All of them focused on the trapped raiders, recording every detail of their equipment, every attempt at escape, every reaction to their imprisonment. In Chamber 2, Kirvan's team faced their own revelation. The artificial gravity had finally stabilized, but now the air itself seemed to be conducting tests. Microscopic probes, invisible to the naked eye but detectable on their failing sensors, sampled their armor's exterior, analyzing its composition down to the molecular level. "Our suits," one raider reported, panic edging into his voice. "The atmospheric filters are cataloging everything they screen out. They're using our own life support systems to analyze our biochemistry." Kirvan watched as sections of wall transformed, taking on properties similar to their armor's crystalline structure. "They're not just studying our technology," he realized. "They're improving on it. Real-time adaptation and implementation." In the third chamber, Verlac's group had stopped trying to escape. Their most sophisticated scanning equipment, capable of detecting flaws in space-time itself, displayed readings that defied comprehension. The chamber wasn't just a room. It was a single massive sensor, analyzing them from quantum scales up to macro-level observations. The humans, Verlac spoke quietly to his team. "We thought they were primitive because they didn't use crystalline technology like ours. We never considered they might have moved beyond it entirely." In the control room, Sarah Chen studied the incoming data with intense concentration. Each chamber fed a constant stream of information to her displays. Material analysis, technological capabilities, tactical responses, even psychological profiles derived from the raiders' reactions to their containment. "Their crystalline tech is impressive," Dr. Rodriguez admitted, reviewing the analysis. "But it's linear, predictable. They built better versions of the same basic concepts. While he gestured at the displays showing the station's adaptive material in action. "We went sideways," Sarah finished. "Instead of building bigger crystals, we learned to make metal behave like a living thing. Instead of stronger shields, we created materials that adapt to any attack. They've been climbing a ladder while we built an elevator." Dr. Wei's console chimed softly. "Final analysis of their armor is complete. The quantum resonance patterns are mapped. We can neutralize their entire fleet's defensive systems with a properly calibrated pulse now." Sarah nodded, but her attention was focused on a new development. In Chamber 1, Ravkor had discovered something in his desperation. He'd stopped trying to cut through the walls and instead attempted to communicate with them, treating the strange metal as if it were alive. "Now that's interesting," she murmured. "He's the first one to try that approach. Flag his biological signature. He might be useful later." The station continued its work, each chamber gathering data that would help protect human space for decades to come. The trap had succeeded beyond their expectations, not just capturing the raiders but revealing the fundamental philosophy behind their technology. And in their separate prisons, the Krezak warriors finally understood the truth. They hadn't fallen into a primitive society's desperate defense. They'd walked straight into humanity's technological crucible, and it had found them wanting. Zexcor stared at the maintenance terminal he'd finally managed to hack, his compound eyes reflecting the scrolling data that shattered every assumption he'd held about human technology. The mineral readings that had lured them here were elaborate forgeries, digital bait in a trap that had been centuries in the making. No, he chittered, mandibles trembling as he dug deeper into the station's files. This isn't possible. The whole sector, everything we know about human space. The terminal showed him the truth. Every primitive human outpost in the sector was a variant of this facility. Each one was designed to attract different types of raiders, pirates, and hostile species, each customized to study specific technologies and tactics. The humans hadn't colonized space. They'd turned it into a vast laboratory. A soft chime drew his attention to a new file that had unlocked itself. Security footage began playing, showing other raids on different stations. He watched as Centaurian phase ships were trapped in temporal loops, their most advanced stealth technology rendered useless. Drachnid swarm fleets were captured in massive energy webs, their hive mind tactics recorded and countered. "Captain," one of his remaining team members called out, voice shaking. "The walls, they're changing again." The corridor around them had begun to transform, but this time it wasn't trying to trap them. Instead, it was demonstrating its capabilities. Sections of wall shifted through different material phases, crystalline structures like their armor, energy fields like Centaurian shields, even organic compounds that mimicked Drachnid biotechnology. Their research stations, Zexcor realized aloud. We thought they were vulnerable targets, but they were collecting data. Every raid, every attack, every piece of advanced technology brought into their space, they weren't just defending against it. They were learning from it. A human voice finished for him, improving on it, testing the limits of what's possible. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, transmitted through the very metal of the station itself. Zexcor recognized it from their pre-raid intelligence. Sarah Chen, the station's commander. "Your crystalline technology, for instance," she continued, her tone carrying genuine fascination. "Brilliant engineering. The way it interfaces with your neural systems, the quantum-scale energy distribution. We've been eager to study it up close." Zexcor's antennae twitched violently. You wanted us to attack." "Attack is such an aggressive word," Sarah replied. "I prefer to think of it as contributing to the advancement of science. Your raid has provided valuable data on crystalline computing architectures. The Centaurians showed us phase technology. The Drachnid taught us about organic computing. Each species that thought they were exploiting our weakness actually helped us leap forward decades in our research." The terminal displayed new data, showing how the station had already begun incorporating elements of Kresak technology into its systems. But it wasn't just copying. It was evolving the concepts, taking them in directions Zexcor's people had never considered. "Why reveal this to us?" he asked, already suspecting the answer. "Because you've demonstrated something interesting," Sarah responded. "Most raiders, once trapped, resort to brute force. But you tried to understand. You realized something was wrong and attempted to analyze it. That's the kind of thinking we value." The corridor shifted again, creating a direct path, the first reliable route they'd seen since entering the station. "I'm offering you a choice, Captain Zexcor. Your ship is already contained in a temporal bubble. Your crew is secure in their respective analysis chambers. You can either spend the next few cycles in a very comfortable detention facility, or you can help us push the boundaries of what's possible." Zexcor stared at the open corridor, understanding flowing through him like ice water. The humans hadn't built warships because they'd turned space itself into their weapon. They hadn't developed advanced technology because they were too busy learning how to transcend it entirely. "And if we refuse, then you'll be safely contained until we complete our analysis of your technology. But consider this, Wouldn't you rather be part of the next evolution? Your people spent centuries perfecting crystalline computing. We can show you what lies beyond it. The corridor waited, a path leading either to imprisonment or illumination. And Zexakor, master raider and veteran of 100 heists, found himself facing the most important choice of his life. The holographic interface sprang to life in the corridor before Zexakor, and for the first time, he saw Sarah Chen face to face. The human commander stood with casual confidence, her dark eyes studying him with the same analytical intensity his species reserved for particularly fascinating puzzles. "Your reputation precedes you, Captain," she said, hands clasped behind her back. 3 successful raids on supposedly secure facilities. No casualties. Minimal structural damage. You're not just a raider. You're an expert in systems analysis. Zexakor's mandibles clicked in what might have been appreciation. And you, Commander Chen, have created something that violates at least 6 laws of physics. Our scientists claimed adaptive materials of this scale were impossible. Impossible is just a word for something you haven't understood yet. Sarah gestured, and the hologram expanded to show the station's true architecture. Layer upon layer of impossibly complex systems unfolded before them, a dance of materials and energy that made Zexakor's scientific mind reel with possibilities. "Your containment chambers," he chittered thoughtfully. "They weren't just analyzing our technology, were they? They were testing our responses, our ability to adapt." Finally, another voice joined in as Dr. Rodriguez's hologram appeared. "Someone who asks the right questions." The chambers were psychological evaluations as much as technical analysis. "We needed to know if you could think beyond your crystals." The station hummed around them, its walls rippling with patterns that mimicked the crystalline structure of Krezak armor. But wrong somehow. Better, more efficient. The same technology pushed in directions Zexakor's people had never imagined. "Your crew is currently experiencing similar revelations," Sarah continued. "Particularly your demolitions expert, Ravkor. He's already theorizing applications we hadn't considered. Creative mind, that one." Holograms showed Zexakor his separated crew members. Some were still trying to escape, but others, including Ravkor, were deeply engaged in studying the chambers containing them, their scientific curiosity overriding their fear. "Why us?" Zexakor asked finally. "You could have captured any raiding party. Why wait for the Krezak?" Sarah's smile held genuine respect. "Because you're innovators. Other species perfect existing technology. The Centaurians with their phase tech, the Drachnid with their biocomputing, they all climbed the same ladders. But the Krezak, you created crystalline computing from scratch. You think differently. And that's what humanity wants. Different thinking. What humanity wants," Dr. Wei's hologram joined them, completing the trinity of station leaders, "is to break every ceiling. Push every boundary. We don't want to climb the ladder of progress. We want to build an elevator to the stars." The corridor around them transformed again, but this time it wasn't a demonstration of power. The walls became transparent, revealing the true scope of the station. What had seemed like a simple mining outpost was actually a vast research facility, with the raiders' containment chambers forming just a tiny part of an enormous laboratory complex. "This is your choice, Captain," Sarah said softly. "You and your crew can be prisoners, or you can be pioneers. Help us understand how your crystals think, and we'll show you how to make them dance. Your technology for our perspective, your expertise for our innovation." Zexakor's compound eyes reflected the vast array of research projects visible through the transparent walls. His people had spent generations perfecting their crystalline technology, believing they'd reached the pinnacle of what was possible. But here, in this human trap disguised as a station, he saw something his species had lost: the sheer joy of discovery. "And if we accept?" he asked, already knowing his answer. "Then we start now." Sarah's hologram gestured, and new data streams appeared in the air around them. "Your ship's quantum core is particularly interesting. We have theories about hybridizing it with our adaptive materials." One condition. Zexcor interrupted, straightening to his full height. We maintain our autonomy. We're not your servants or your subjects. We're colleagues. Sarah finished. Fellow researchers pushing the boundaries of what's possible. After all, her hologram smiled. The best traps don't just catch their prey. They'd make them want to stay. And in that moment, surrounded by impossible technology and endless possibilities, Zexcor realized that this wasn't the end of his raid. It was the beginning of something far more interesting. 2 cycles later, the story of the human trap station had spread through the galactic underworld like a quantum virus. In smoky bars and shadowy ports, raiders and pirates whispered about the facility that could think, the walls that learned, and the humans who had turned defense into an art form. In Research Lab 7 of Station LV-2247, now officially redesignated as Collaborative Research Facility Alpha, Ravkor carefully adjusted a crystalline matrix floating in a containment field. His former captain, Zexcor, stood beside him, both of them watching as human adaptive materials flowed around the crystal structure. There, Sarah Chen said, studying the readouts. That's the integration we've been looking for. Your crystalline computing combined with our adaptive materials. It's not just storing data anymore, it's evolving with it. The crystal pulsed with internal light, its structure shifting in ways that should have been impossible. What had once been rigid and unchanging now flowed like liquid thought, maintaining its computational integrity while constantly optimizing its own structure. If you had told me 3 cycles ago that I'd be helping humans advance their technology, Ravkor chittered, mandibles curved in what humans had learned was a Krizak smile, I would have assumed you'd been breathing bad atmosphere. Dr. Rodriguez laughed from his workstation. If you told me we'd have Krizak raiders voluntarily improving our research, I'd have ordered a neural scan. He gestured at a holographic display showing the day's results. Your insights into quantum crystalline resonance alone have advanced our project by years. Through the lab's transparent walls, they could see other former raiders working in adjacent sections. Verlac had proved particularly adept at theoretical applications, his tactical mind finding uses for the hybrid technology that neither species had considered. Even those who had initially chosen detention had gradually requested transfers to the research teams, unable to resist the allure of discovery. Another raid attempted on Outpost 7 yesterday. Dr. Wei announced, entering the lab with fresh data scrolls. Drachnid High Ship. They didn't even make it past the outer markers before the hybrid defense system adapted to their biotech, turned their own organic computing against them. Let me guess, Zexcor said, examining the incident report. They've already requested research privileges. Sarah nodded, a slight smile playing at her lips. Their hive queen was apparently quite impressed with the biological empathy of our systems. She's already submitted 3 proposals for collaborative studies. The station hummed around them, its walls gleaming with the now familiar merger of crystalline and adaptive technologies. What had once been a trap had evolved into something else entirely, a crucible of innovation where former adversaries pushed the boundaries of possibility together. You know what the funniest part is? Ravkor asked, adjusting another crystal formation. Everyone out there. They still think human space is poorly defended. They see these vulnerable outposts and think they've found an easy target. And they'll keep coming, Sarah agreed. Keep testing our defenses, keep contributing their technologies and insights to our database. The greatest security system in the galaxy isn't a weapon or a shield, it's curiosity itself. Through the station's external viewers, they could see a new ship approaching, sleek, dangerous, and completely unaware that it wasn't approaching a target but a teacher. Its energy signature marked it as Malarian, a species known for their advanced quantum tunneling technology. Should we prepare a welcome for our new potential colleagues? Zexcor asked, his antennae twitching with what might have been amusement. Sarah studied the approaching vessel, already noting aspects of its design that would make fascinating additions to their research. Let's show them something interesting. Ravkor, would you like to demonstrate our new hybrid defense system? Show them what happens when crystalline precision meets adaptive unpredictability. As the station prepared to receive its newest visitors, Zexcor reflected on the strange path that had led him here. His people had prided themselves on being master raiders, the finest thieves in known space. But the humans had stolen something far more valuable than any technology or resource. They had stolen the future itself, not through force or superiority, but by making everyone want to be part of it. And that, Zexcor had to admit, was the greatest heist of all.